Good morning students, how are you? I am Francis sir and today we will be studying standard 6 chemistry. As discussed in the previous chapter, lecture, we started the lesson 5th of this subject, yes, and it was your separation of substances. We dealt with two types of substances. One is your pure and the other one is your impure. In the impure type of substances, we studied about mixtures. The mixtures are of two types, homogeneous and the heterogeneous types of mixture. Okay. So today we will be studying how to separate the constituents of a mixture. Okay. So how to separate? Yes, how we methods of separation. Okay, we are going to study. But before we study that, we should also try to know that why there is the need of separation. Why there is the need of separation of the components of a mixture. If we have anything, for instance, we have any type of substance, then mixture substance. So why is it necessary for us to separate the components of this mixture? So it is because we will study this in this the purpose of separation. Okay. So first one is to remove the harmful or the undesirable substance. Whenever we have any substance, what may happen, there might be some undesirable things present in it. For example, we have, you have that rice, and the rice, sometimes that black particles are present there. What do? We remove these black particles. Yes. Sometimes, we have this small stones present there. Yes. We remove these stones also with our hands. Yes. So we know that these stones or these black things, we don't want to eat them. Therefore, we remove them. Yes. For example, this what to say? This potato. In potato, there is a peel. So if you don't want to eat that peel, what do? We remove out this peel, and eat only the inner thing, inner potato thing. Yes. So that is what we do. Or sometimes, we have that tea, you have seen tea, chai. Yes. That tea, after it is made, we use that filtering device, that chutney we say in Hindi, that filtering device, we use that filter we use, and we pour the tea, and you see that drinking tea is separated from the tea leaves with the help of that tea. So because we need tea, we don't want to have tea leaves in our mouth, because we want to drink tea but not to eat tea. Yes. Understood? So you see that there are so many necessities, where so many places, where the separation is required from a mixture. So the constituents need to be separated. So the first one is to remove the harmful and undesirable substance. Second one, to obtain a pure sample of substance. Sometimes, there is a group of mixtures are there, and from that we want only the purest form, means pure form. For instance, we have this, what to say, petroleum. We have petroleum. In petroleum, if we want to have petrol, we need to separate it out from the rest of the other things. If we want to have kerosene, we have to separate it from the rest of the other things. So kerosene is a pure substance, petrol is a pure substance, which we get from what? We get it from the petroleum. Okay. So third is to obtain useful substance. Yes. For example, the same petroleum we did see, there are so many things present, and of this, this petrol, diesel, LPGs, these are your what? Useful substances. So we separate them separately. Okay. Okay. For example, what we have, salt is prepared from seawater. So in seawater we have, salt is there, but it is dissolved in the water. Which water? Seawater. So we separate the salt from the water. Where this salt is what? what? A useful substance for us, whereas that seawater is not so useful. So we separate seawater from the salt by any method necessary, what is suitable, that is different thing. But you understand why is separation of substances necessary. Separation of substances necessary because of these factors. Okay. Now we will go through the various methods of separation. So the method of separation is depending upon the type of components present. So if a solid is mixed with a solid, means a solid has to be separated from a solid mixture. So that can be done in hand picking, as I told you in rice, we pick up the unwanted substance with our hands. Another one is your sieving. You might have seen that, this sieve, in Hindi we say chalni. So this sieve, it is used to separate the particles which are of larger size with the particles which are of smaller size. Okay. So as we might have seen that, after making flour in the machine, what happens? Your mummy, what does she do? She sieves the flour. She sieves the flour. She sieves the flour. Okay. So you might have seen that, if you consider this as a sieve, your mom puts the flour here and she starts sieving it. Okay. So what is that? You see that on the bottom side on the plate, the fine flour particles are separated from the coarse flour particles. On the top of the sieve, you might see that big particles of the flour. So this sieving is a process by which you can separate finer particles from larger particles. Okay. Then we have winnowing. Winnowing is a process, in which you can separate heavy particles from lighter particles with the help of wind. So what do we do? You might have seen the farmers. They take that, after threshing, what they do? They take the wheat, rice, jowar, bajra, whatever it is, or pulses. They take it in a basket and they pour it from the top. Okay. And what happens is that when they pour it from the top, so this is the basket, and from it is poured down like this. So what happens that when the breeze comes, lighter particles are carried away at this place, whereas the heavy grains, get deposited here. So this is what happens in winnowing. This is what happens in winnowing. Whereas threshing is also another way of separating these lighter particles from these threshing, we can separate soft particles from hard particles. How? You might have seen the farmers, they beat the hay with the rice. Yes. So what happens is that when they beat it, so this hard particles, grains, they strike on the rock and they rebounds back. Whereas this grass particle, this grass, hay, it does not strike so much, so it remains at the same place. So that is what happens. So if this is a rock, and this is hay, when this hay strikes, here we have these grains. These grains after striking the rock, it bounces back, whereas the hay remains here only. And since it bounced back, it is detached from the hay. This happens because you might have heard that a very famous law of Newton. Every action has its equivalent opposite reaction. So same way, you hit it very hard, these grains bounce back very hard, whereas the hay remains at the same place because they are so soft. So this is happening this is the procedure in threshing. Okay. Now we will talk about separating of insoluble solid from liquids. Sometimes the mixture is between a solid and a liquid, and that solids are of two types, either they are soluble or either they are insoluble. So if we have an insoluble solid mixed with a liquid, then what will happen? So what are the different ways of separation? The different ways of separation are, first one is sedimentation, and sedimentation is a process in which what do? We take a beaker in which what happens, this impure water is put here. Then what happens slowly, because of this these particles being solid and heavy, what they happen, they start to settle down. They start to settle down at the bottom of the container. So this process happens, it takes for 2, 3, 4, 5, the longer time you take the more more separation happens because of this gravity. Okay, so this happens. So when this happens, after this, we get a quite clear, we get a very quite clean water on the top, and these impurities are deposited at the bottom. So after we get this pure liquid, after sedimentation, we pour it into another beaker. This process is called decantation. So after decantation, after sedimentation, if we pour the pure liquid obtained into the next container, it is called decantation. Okay. Now what about loading? Loading is a process, in which we increase the rate of sedimentation. What do we do? We increase the rate of sedimentation. How? By adding alum. Potash alum is added. Alum, Fitcary. So when we add alum, it dissolves in the water and get deposited on these particles, making these particles heavier. So alum first dissolves and then deposits. First it dissolves, then it deposits where? On these particles. And when it deposits on these particles become heavy. And what happens is that this process of sedimentation, which is happening in 2 hours or 3 hours, it happens in half an hour. Okay, so this makes the process faster. Okay, so this was about loading. And if the particles if they are quite big, we can use filtration. Just like tea, in tea, we separate the tea leaves from the liquid. So if the particles are quite big, we can use this filtration. And churning. Now we have churning. Churning, this is a very common example of, you might have seen that in village areas, the ladies, they take out butter. With this procedure. You might have seen that. So how does this happen? What happens is that in this, this solid, when it moves around, what happens is that the milk moves round and round. The milk moves round and round. When they move round and round, what happens? They move towards the center like this. They move towards the center. And then when these parts move towards the center, what happens that these fat present in the milk, gets deposited in the long stick which is present. All the fat which is present here comes and deposited in the center on this long stick. Okay, so this is called churning, and this churning is possible because of a process called centrifugation. This churning is possible because of centrifugation. Centrifugation is what? The one that I told you. When you make this milk or the water to move round and round, what happens? They, while moving, they tend to move towards the center. And when they tend to move towards the center, what is happening? These fat present here gets deposited at the center. Okay, so when this fat gets deposited at the center, it can be taken out in the form of butter. This fat of the milk is only called butter. Okay, so now we have one more separation, that is separating solids from liquid. What type of solid? Soluble solid. There are at times, when the solid present in the liquid is mixed with the liquid is soluble. For example, I gave you the example of seawater. This seawater is a mixture of water and salt. So when we are to separate this salt from the sea water, how do we do that? You know, we separate this solid salt from the liquid water. How? It is by the process called evaporation. This is the only process, you know, by which we can separate a solid which is dissolved in a liquid. So by evaporation, you know, the water evaporates and leaves behind the solid at the base. Okay, so these are the different ways of separating different types of mixtures: solid from solid, solid from liquid, which type of solid, insoluble solid and liquid, and here we have soluble solid from a liquid. Okay, so this is enough for today. Okay, and in the next class we will be, next part of the lecture, you know, we will further go for one or two processes are left, that we will go in detail in the next process. So study well, and goodbye. See you in the next video.